And we're back in the studio like we never left. Welcome to the Confessions of a Not So Dangerous Mind podcast. I'd like to thank you all for spending some of your Sunday evening here with me in New York. But once again, we're going to skip past all that promotional jazz and get right to the guts of the episode. So, this is not going to be a movie-themed episode. Talk? What we got to talk about? I'm going to give you, dear viewers, dear listeners, a little bit more insight into not only the mindset of a admitted savant, somebody who quite clearly neurodivergent on the autism spectrum, as I said, but someone whose life did not go, has not gone at all the way anybody could have predicted. But I'm still here, damn it. I'm still here. But what I wanted to speak of in particular, and you can think about this for yourselves. Now I'm 51 years old. I'm right in the middle of Generation X. I was born December 1973. My dad, the CPA, born late in the month. The joke was, hey, Cone, you got a tax deduction because your son was born before the end of the year. You know how many times I heard that? But I did things at a different pace, a slower pace. And what I'm here to tell you is that there is no proper pace, as my adorable cat here will tell you. He knows all from proper pace. He's 9 and he just walks around here like he owns the place. And hey, when I'm not home, it's Sheldon's house, right? It's Sheldon's house and we are just living in it. Well, I'm just living in it, but it's his house. There is an idea, though, that social media, I know, takes a lot of heat in the sense of it puts ideas in our collective heads of things that we should achieve by a certain point in time, should have already achieved by a certain point in time. So-and-so was a millionaire by 35, and I'm slinging hash at a fucking coffee shop at 46, or whatever the case might be. This is all real, but I'm here to tell you that there is no blueprint. You can try to follow a blueprint. It doesn't mean that you're going to succeed, but not having done something by a certain age does not mean that you have failed, because the test isn't over until the test is actually over. Or as Yogi Berra said in speaking about the New York Mets 1973 season, which seemed to be a lost season, it ain't over till it's over. Don't get hung up on numbers. Don't get hung up on timelines. And also, don't get hung up on the mythology of social media. Now there are people who are more successful than you know. This is something that my life experience will tell you. There are people who are very quiet, even in the social media era, and you think they're just doing okay if in fact you even think of them, and it turns out they're doing stupendous. But they do it in secret. They do it in silence. They do it for themselves, for their families, their inner circle of friends. They don't feel a need to broadcast the ups and downs of their lives on social media. So where I am going with this long-winded wind-up is that I did not live on my own. I didn't live on my own. I didn't live alone until I was in my year 45, which coincides to 2019. I was 45 for 361 or 362 days of 2019. So to kind of speed up the timeline of my particular story, I lived with my parents, not surprisingly, for the first 13 years of them being together, and then my parents split up, and I ended up living with my father more or less starting when I was in my age 16, 17 year of 11th grade. And then as I somewhat recently talked about in an episode in June about my high school graduation, from that time forward, I lived with my father. My entire college career, and then my fledgling, there's that word again, my fledgling screenwriting career. Come on, Shell. You see? He's very, very destructive, and now he's going to probably leave in shame. He's such a funny cat. You knocked over my poster, Sheldon. Not nice. But I lived with my father from 1992 until 2012. I lived with my dear old dad for 20 years. It wasn't until right before I got married, spoiler alert, that I was living with him. And then during my marriage, obviously I didn't live by myself, live with my bride, right? I mean, I'm not making any jokes. My marriage ended in 2018. And, well, when she moved out, I was suddenly, well, what am I going to do? Now, I was not at my father's house. This was when I was in the apartment in Huntington. So we have emotional moments that we know are coming, emotional moments we can expect, cathartic moments that we can see coming. And then there are moments of great emotion, tidal wave of emotion that we don't see in advance. And sometime early in 2019, as I found myself in the apartment by myself, and I realized, I don't know why it didn't hit me a few weeks prior, but I realized, hey, I'm actually living by myself here. I'm living on my own. Wow. And for reasons unknown, I just started bawling my head off. I don't know if it was cathartic because I saw this as some kind of an achievement when in fact, my marriage had failed. This was not much of an achievement. Like, I wasn't supposed to be by myself. Here I was by myself. And I was somehow feeling maybe not content, but I was feeling as if I had done something. I had achieved something. It's just back assward. So when I became single again, I feel like everything accelerated. My life improved as I began to kind of take steps towards reestablishing a social existence that I didn't think I was ever, like, there's a lot of stuff that happens in life that you can't plan for. There are a lot of things that you end up, and situations you end up in that you didn't think you were going to be in. So because I had been such a socially awkward individual, there were plenty of people in my sphere, people that I would still consider friends to this day, that felt that it was a miracle that I actually got married, that I was that far along socially that I got married. Like, there were people, including probably both of my parents, who didn't think that I was ever going to have a real social life, because the first 30-something years of my existence suggested he can't do this. Well, I didn't think I could do this. There were no outside forces conspiring against me. But when I suddenly found myself single and alone, and honestly, I was pretty lonely in the early phase and the early stages of 2018. I don't know that friends got together and said, we need to make sure he's okay. We need to keep tabs on him. Hopefully he doesn't just fall apart or backslide into the loner with no social life that he was when we met him here at Bev's gym, because my friend group, not surprisingly, was at Bev's gym. But the fact that there were so many different people early in 2019 who, yeah, I would see a lot of them at the gym, but they were messaging me. They were including me in functions, in events. And they were doing it not because they felt sorry for me. They were doing it because they were nervous, they were worried, and they wanted me to know that, hey, we're not holding it against you that things turned out this way. The surprise to now myself, looking back on this 6.5 years ago, and the surprise to many of the people in my circle, is that I didn't retreat into my hovel, that I did not return to my hermity ways, that I started living out loud. And that is something that I had never done before. I still had hopes of screenwriting glory. As 2019 opened, I was still working on the screenplay. The project is now completely dead and has been dead since, well, maybe it's not dead, but it's been dead for me. It's been dead for me since the fall of 2019. But I still had hopes of screenwriting glory. My father was still healthy. He would have been, 76 at the time, long retired, but living in a house in Huntington, which was where I was before I got here. But I had the apartment in Huntington Village right by the book review. And my life was not that difficult. And the reality is that most of my life was not that difficult. I had a lot of things that were laid out for me more or less on a silver platter. And whether I took advantage of that or not, it's something that I understand now, and I started to get it. I was already 45. Bro, do you have any idea how much easier you have it? You just need to surmount your own obstacles. You just need to get out of your own head, especially now that you weren't expecting this run out, and here we are. You're by yourself, just you and your cats, living in a nice apartment with warped flooring because the building was built in the 19th century, and I could still see it going. You'd walk into certain rooms, and it was almost like you were on a ship, and like, is the ship moving? No, we're hitting waves. What do you mean, is the ship's moving? So I went on dating sites because why not? It's not like I didn't have a number of people who I could just text and say, hey, you want to get together for a meal? Because listen, I took my marriage seriously. The fact that it failed, or that I failed, however you want to say it, it wasn't because I didn't take it seriously. I didn't have 15 women on speed dial, is what I'm saying. I had to really start from scratch. And the irony is, I never had a casual dating phase in my 30s. I did not have a real relationship until I was 37. 37! Like, I'd gotten out of college 15 years prior. I graduated New York University in 97. I finished my coursework in 96. Think about how many people I met, how many women I met going back to nursery school. The joke is that women my own age were never interested in me going back to nursery school. But there was just something in me that I wasn't content to sit back and wait for the world to kind of come to me. I needed to be more aggressive on a personal level. I needed to be more direct, and I needed to not let that many days just go by without accomplishing anything. And when I was working on this particular screenplay, and even going back to the early 2000s when I had multiple projects which looked like they were going to go, there were a lot of days where I didn't accomplish anything other than going to the gym. Now, you know that I am not downplaying the importance of going to the gym, but I would say that if somebody says, how was your day at 10 o'clock at night? And all you can point to is, well, I had a good workout this morning. No offense to I'm going to offend my younger self. My younger self was a clown. But that's not good enough. You have to have more in your day. And there were huge chunks during my screenwriter phase where, yeah, maybe I did some work, but maybe I was waiting for people to get back to me. And I didn't do anything else to further myself, not professionally, but personally, emotionally, spiritually, psychologically. I didn't do anything in that regard. So here I was in the first part of 2019, interacting with people I had never met, and in a different version of the Matrix, I still would not have interacted with or be interacting with. And what I found within the first 3 or 4 months of 2019, a guy such as myself in his 40s who does not have a roommate, although for a time I had an illegal Airbnb that I ran out of the apartment. that was some real great stuff until it got shut down. I thought the landlady was going to blow a gasket. It wasn't funny then, but looking back on it, that whole sequence was really funny. But if you are let's say an intelligent, tall, reasonably charming guy in his 40s, you have a very wide range of people who might be interested in getting to know you. And this was something that took me by surprise because I still had what you would have to describe as a loser's mindset. 45 years old. If we rewind the clock to January 2019 and you take that guy who was already 45 and you bring him here, you're going to meet your 51-and-a-half-year-old self. You're not going to believe where you're living. You're not going to believe a lot of other stuff, but you for sure won't believe how much a mindset can shift. So I was taken by surprise when women were expressing a lot of interest in meeting me. And I kept thinking, well, this can't be right. Now, there's nothing wrong with having your guard up, right? There's nothing wrong with being cautious, because the dating apps, and when I had my friend Jen on when she was here, we had a lot of laughs, we joked about it, but it's not that you're trying to find a needle in a haystack. If you're serious about meeting a person that you might have a future with, as again, crazy as that may sound right now, but you're not so much looking for a needle in a haystack as you're looking for a needle in a stack of needles. It's very, very difficult. But having said that, you should still be open to new experiences. And by putting myself out there, by making myself vulnerable in the early part of 2019, I met a lot of different women of varying ages, varying backgrounds, thought processes, what drove them, all of that. And I had a lot of ups and downs in the year of 2019. And as I hinted at, in September of 2019, I quit the film project that I had been working on literally since May of 2006. 13 years I worked on the same script. I went through hundreds, if not thousands, of drafts over and over and over. 13 years of my life. 13 years of my professional life, flushed down a fucking toilet. Flushed right down the toilet. But I reached a point, in the immortal words of Bill Murray in Groundhog Day, when he says to Andy McDowell, "I've come to the end of me, Rita." I came to the end of me. That was it. I went as far as I could go. I needed to, rejoin reality land. This project is never going anywhere. And I'm tired of listening to people that I wouldn't hire them to do anything, and they're telling me what's wrong with my script. And, the writer needs to work on XYZ. No shit, okay? We can't all be David Mamet or Stephen King. I'm sorry that I'm just a regular guy trying to knock out a screenplay here. But life, despite the peaks and valleys of my age 45 year, something else happened unexpected. Now, yes, I joke around and call this was my brief but illustrious swinging singles phase. But within the trying to look for a needle in a stack of needles, because I was somebody who, at least in theory, wanted to be serious, did not want to just sort of casually hook up, or random encounters, or, Kevin Costner and Sean Young in No Way Out, where they meet at a party and then they have about 3 hours of sex, and then they get each other's name. And I didn't want to do that. That was not what I was going for. But some point in 2019, one of the young women who I met, we started to get a little bit more serious, and lo and behold, I fell in love. Now, that was something that I did not see coming. I did not have that on my bingo card. I simply wanted to make sure I did not disappear from polite society. I wanted to get as much out of not only my life from a broad sense, but get as much out of every day as I possibly could. I wasn't expecting to meet somebody and go on vacation with her twice in 2019. Spoiler alert, we went to Atlantic City both times. But this is how you need to go outside of your comfort zone. And I realized that literally decades of my life, I was so afraid to fail. I was so afraid to be naked, metaphorically, and vulnerable, that I was stuck in the comfort zone. We talk about guys being, stuck in the friend zone. I was stuck in my own comfort zone. And the joke is, it wasn't very comfortable in my comfort zone. I was still miserable and unhappy. It's not like, he's going to stay there because he's happy. No, he's still pissed off in the so-called comfort zone. But because I dared, because I risked failure, because I risked humiliation, I risked disappointment, I would say that 2019 was, for all of the down moments, I gave up on my screenwriting career. I turned my back on it. It doesn't mean that I never sent anything out again, but I realized I needed to I needed to stop calling myself a screenwriter and nothing else. Because if you're not making money, if you are not earning a living or have earned enough where you might be getting residuals, well, and it's like the old John Lennon thing, and we talk about it in the movie Mr. Holland's Opus. Life is what happens when you're busy making other plans, but also what you're doing instead of your real job, that is your real job. And that's why I held on so long to that screenplay, and with the mistaken belief that I was going to make millions of dollars, or at the very least get a couple of screenplays produced, or go further in the process than, well, we just have a couple of pieces of talent attached. We have a director, a producer, and a few actors circling a project. I thought I was going to get further along than that. But ultimately, there was no timeline for me. I did not really experience I know people who were living on their own in their teens. My mother moved to Puerto Rico when she was in her teens. She lived on her own in a land where, yeah, she could speak Espanol, but she got more fluent as she lived there. I didn't have real adult responsibilities until really my late 40s. I still had my father to bail me out if I was in a jam, and God bless my old man. He gave me so much rope. He gave me so much leeway because he saw that I was trying. If I had not taken shots at anybody, but if he had seen me as someone who was not still grinding it out, who wasn't still trying to sell a screenplay, let's just market this thing, it's not going to get any better, whatever it was. But it hurt him to see me flailing about. But at the same time, he had my back. And what that meant was, if I fell, he was going to be there to pick me up. And it wasn't until later, when he was gone, that there wasn't anybody. My mother lives 1,000 miles away. My sister lives elsewhere. Sometimes you need help. You need a decision. You need to come to a conclusion on your own in the moment. And it wasn't until my late 40s that those kinds of things took place, with all of the madness swirling around with this house where you currently see me sitting in this nice office with all my movie posters, not all of which you can see. There is nothing that says you can't have your best years in your 40s, in your 50s, in your 60s. Obviously, I'm not there yet. I'm still in my early 50s. Unlearn what you have learned, as Yoda said. Don't compare yourself to other people. You can use other people as a reference point and use other people for inspiration. When you see the achievements of people that you see, this guy started from nothing and look at what he's made. Look at what he's done. My friend so-and-so, a successful small business owner, didn't want to go into the family business, wanted to, do his own thing. All of that stuff. But you have to risk. You have to venture out of whatever box you find yourself in. And maybe you won't hit your goals, your A goals. So find some B goals and some C goals. I was too focused on professional success. Now, there's nothing wrong with being hyper-focused on professional success, but I didn't consider anything else. I saw considering anything else as an admission of failure and defeat. And I wasn't willing until the fall of 2019. I wasn't willing to admit that I had failed. And I can admit it now. I had a lot of opportunities. Something always went wrong. But the reality is the great ones figure it out. The truly great ones will always get discovered, I believe. At least I'd like to think that they would. But I accept that. There are plenty of writers who just happen to get something through at a certain time, and then maybe they didn't work again after that. I mean, that still sounds pretty good. But I was meant for something else. And it's okay, because I am happier now, day to day, than I was when I was struggling and stressing and taking one aggravating, maddening phone call after another from the West Coast, just screaming and cursing. Can you imagine a couple of grown men in their, at the time, 40s and maybe 50s, screaming and cursing at each other over a screenplay that hasn't been sold, that's just going back and forth? that kind of aggravation, 2 thumbs down from Siskel and Ebert. You don't need that. And again, I'm reminded of the Nicolas Cage character in the movie Matchstick Men from the early 2000s, where he is, when we meet him, he is a basket case, he is angry, he is miserable. He really is helpless in his personal life. He's good at making money, though. He's good at making money. But he's terrible at almost everything else. And then by the end of the story, money is not as important. The amount that he makes per month, he does not judge himself on such things. Is he happier? Yes. And as speaking of another movie, this is a moment between father and son in the film and father and son in real life, where Charlie Sheen points out angrily to Martin Sheen, his father, and his father in the movie, where he basically says, you know, Dad, you've been in your business for how many years, and you just can't handle the fact that right now it looks like I'm more successful than you. And Martin Sheen, it's one of the best moments of his career. He says, I never judge the success of a man by the size of his wallet. And if you, whatever it is that you do, if you are in a position that you don't have to stress about money every day, and we all, almost all of us, stress about money to one degree or another. My father stressed about money. He had, plenty of it, but he's still worried about it. But I mean, if you're not worried about where your next meal is coming from, if you're not in a panic because you owe hundreds of thousands of dollars and have no means to pay, I'm saying you have normal worries, that you don't want to forget certain bills. Normal stuff I would consider that normal stuff. I really shouldn't speak for everybody, but you know where I'm coming from. If you are a normal person who works hard and you can pay all of your bills on time every month, ask yourself the question, if you suddenly dropped an additional $1 million into your bank account, what would change about your life? How much happier do you think you would be day to day? Now, the immediate answer is, a lot happier. But if that happened to me, if I suddenly had an additional $1 million, okay, my life really wouldn't change that much. I'm not going to stop working. I'm not going to stop trying to create engaging content for you. I'm not going to stop living my life as intensely as I can. I'll just be able to pay bills easier, and maybe I could make an impulse purchase, just go out and buy a car or something, but I would put most of that money into investments. I don't think that I would say, I'll go on a round the world cruise for $100,000. No, I am very much my father's son, Alan Philip Cohen, the C in SCF and Co. He was a saver. He was a saver. My mom is a saver. It's part of the reason why I'm here. It's not just me, it's them. And there's also nothing wrong with having parents who care and parents who are willing to give you a boost when you're down, and sometimes give you a boost when you're not down. My grandfather, may he rest in peace, Nathan Cohen, one of the all-time greats. The fact that he was able to help my dad buy the house in Huntington, because my father's, at that point, his expenses were through the roof and beyond. That was one of the proudest moments for my grandfather, to be able to help his son, who would never ask for anything. My dad was about the same age then as I am now. And it made my grandfather so happy to be able to help his otherwise A-list son. Dad never had any trouble making money, but sometimes, it's like with football. Eventually you run out of arm strength. Eventually you just have too many bills to have a big down payment for a new house. So I am grateful for the struggle. I am grateful for how it has made me appreciate the successes that I have enjoyed. And it's made me appreciate more the value of a good, hard day's work. Like my old man, 5 and 6 days a week for all those years, and my grandfather, who worked 6 days a week at Woodmere Bowling Lanes and Backstage Club as co-owner for more than 2 decades. As ever, I am just about the luckiest person that you will ever know in any capacity. I am grateful for the struggle, and I am also grateful for the successes and the really amazing experiences that I've had I could say in the last 15 years, but in particular, the amazing experiences that I've had in the last 6. Lucky. This has been episode 589 of the Confessions of a Not So Dangerous Mind podcast. I'd like to thank you all so much for spending some of your Sunday evening here with me in New York. If you check out this episode on the YouTube channel, haven't done so already, please click like, subscribe, comment, share, turn on those notifications. Or if you catch this episode on the audio platforms such as Podbean, Spotify, iTunes, or the others in which we're hosted, same general rule applies. Click like, subscribe, share, and turn on those notifications. I'll be back with a new episode real soon. Until then, peace. And don't forget to live out loud.